Welcome to Tomorrow Unveiled, where we dissect the most critical movements shaping our future. This week, it feels like a really definitive shift in the global energy landscape. We're diving deep into what we're calling green code, hot core. The core observation really is this. The whole energy conversation seems to have pivoted. It's moved from focusing only on clean energy sources to prioritizing, well, reliable, high-density energy. We're talking primarily advanced nuclear fission and, maybe surprisingly, the acceleration of fusion.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here, the thing that really jumps out is that this pivot isn't really about ideology. I mean, not primarily. It seems fundamentally driven by economics and just colossal, non-negotiable demand. Think about the relentless, nonstop power needed for the AI revolution, right?
Yes.
Plus the explosion of global data centers and this huge push for industrial decarbonization. All of these things, they put a massive premium on 24/7 reliability.
Oh, that nonstop need.
Exactly. So when our dedicated research team synthesized all the source material, this core strategic insight really emerged. The market is basically signaling that dispatchability, the ability to actually turn power on whenever you need it, that's now a bigger strategic priority than just the speed of carbon reduction alone.
That distinction is so important, isn't it? Dispatchability versus speed. It feels crucial for understanding where energy is right now, the age of high-density energy. It seems like it's truly arrived, and it's being powered by the demands of the digital economy.
Mm-hmm.
So our mission on Tomorrow Unveiled today is to unpack three major consensus themes we found running through all the research material. First, this kind of unprecedented geopolitical alignment that's accelerating advanced fission, specifically small modular reactors, SMRs.
Mm-hmm.
Second, the timeline for commercial fusion, the ultimate hot core, seems to be shrinking, maybe faster than people thought. And third, there's this strategic policy divergence emerging, and it's kind of changing the rules for low-density renewables like wind and solar.
Right. Some real shifts happening there.
Okay, let's start with that foundation then, fission. The biggest piece of news, and maybe the clearest sign that governments are fully behind this pivot, is this Atlantic Partnership for Advanced Nuclear Energy. It's between the U.S. and the U.K. I mean, that seems like a really unprecedented level of coordination, doesn't it? Taking nuclear from just a domestic thing to, well, a geopolitical strategy.
Absolutely. And the intention behind it is critical. The main goal, based on the research, is to create a unified, pretty robust, Western-aligned market. And not just a market, but a supply chain, too, for these SMRs and the advanced modular reactors, AMRs. This isn't just, talk. It involves real coordination on regulatory alignment. And we're talking billions in combined investment plan. It's a very deliberate strategy to make sure the West controls its own nuclear supply chain, cutting down reliance on, potentially adversarial nations.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense from a security angle. But hang on, doesn't that inherently limit the market? Could it maybe increase costs? Are we sort of sacrificing some optimization just for geopolitical safety here?
That's a really fair question. And the analysis suggests that, for now at least, the strategic value of securing that supply chain outweighs the short-term cost pressures. Plus, the report's concern, the main push right now is focused on clearing the non-technical hurdles, like, for instance, this harmonization agreement between the U.S. and U.K. regulators. The aim is to slash project licensing times. Normally, that takes, 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, easily. Sometimes longer.
Right. They're aiming to get it down to about 2 years. If they can actually pull that off, the speed up in deployment alone could drive down the long-term costs quite significantly.
That's huge. That's where the policy infrastructure really needs to catch up with the innovation, doesn't it? And the real-world applications are, they're pretty stunning already. In the materials our research team compiled, we saw specific examples, like the plan to deploy a whole fleet, maybe up to 12 advanced X100 reactors at Hartlepool in the UK.
That's right. And the X100, just for context, it's an advanced high-temperature gas reactor design. It's quite different from the traditional massive light water reactors, supposedly safer, faster to deploy. The goal there at Hartlepool is ambitious, powering about 1.5 million homes and also supporting heavy industry nearby.
But the example that, for me, really nails this strategic pivot is the deal targeting the old Cottam coal plant site in Nottinghamshire. I mean, if you told a coal miner 20 years ago that their industrial site would be reborn as the engine for, artificial intelligence.
He wouldn't have believed you. No way.
Exactly. The plan is to put an SMR project there specifically to power an advanced 1 GW data center. It feels like nuclear has found its new high-value customer, the digital economy that just demands reliability above everything else. So this level of policy support plus the private sector buy-in, it's enabling some pretty aggressive growth projections.
Yeah, building right on that point, the consensus on global nuclear capacity growth is really striking. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, they've dramatically revised their long-term projections upwards. And they've done this for the fifth consecutive year now.
Wow, 5 years running.
Yeah. The high case scenario they're putting out suggests global nuclear capacity could get close to 1,000 gigawatt by 2050. That's
Right.
a massive 2.6-fold increase from where we are in 2024. And they explicitly attribute this upward trend to the huge energy demands coming from, you guessed it, the technology sector.
So, okay, if fission is becoming this secure foundation being laid right now, then our source material suggests fusion. The ultimate hot core is maybe accelerating much faster than anyone really predicted. The timeline seems to be shrinking dramatically.
Right.
When we looked at the latest statements, the U.S. Energy Secretary actually projected that commercial electricity from a fusion plant could be generated in as little as 8 years. 8.
And almost certainly, they said, within 15.
And that isn't just some hopeful guess, right? That's a pretty game-changing projection coming from a high-level government official. It really reflects a new level of confidence, it seems, in the underlying science. What's interesting, too, is that this confidence is being backed up by serious capital. We're seeing big tech companies, the very same ones, creating these immense energy needs, actively funding U.S. fusion startups. They're not just sitting back and waiting for governments to solve it. They're actually driving the innovation themselves.
And the science seems to be keeping pace with that investment. You look at France's West Tokamak. They achieved a major scientific milestone recently, sustaining hot fusion plasma for over 22 minutes. I think the number was 1,337 seconds, to be exact.
Yeah, which is huge. For decades, the big goal was just generating more power out than in. Now the focus is shifting. It's shifting towards stability and sustainment, getting that power generation to last longer than just a few seconds. It moves us much closer to actual power plants.
Right, practical power.
Exactly. And then you also have Europe's Fusion for Energy, F4E, and CERN collaborating. They're working together to speed up the development of high-temperature superconducting magnets. These huge magnet systems are absolutely critical for controlling the plasma in fusion reactors. And this alliance, it sort of solves shared technical challenges, showing how physics research and energy goals are really merging effectively now.
Okay, we've covered a massive amount already, this huge pivot in energy, SMRs, powering AI data centers, the surprising acceleration of commercial fusion. Before we tackle the, let's say, strategic friction this pivot is causing elsewhere in the energy mix, we really want to hear what you think about this major shift towards high-density energy policy. We love hearing your thoughts. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast app, please leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this whole push for the hot core.
And just a brief note for our audio listeners. If you're listening to Tomorrow Unveiled on a service like Apple Podcasts or Spotify, we'd be incredibly grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a rating and a review. It genuinely helps Tomorrow Unveiled reach new listeners who are curious about these pivotal moments in technology and energy.
Absolutely. Okay, so connecting this back to the bigger picture.
Right, because this supportive environment for high-density nuclear tech, it contrasts pretty sharply with some emerging policy headwinds for the low-density sources.
Yeah.
We're talking wind and solar, especially in key markets like the U.S. This is where that green code starts to meet some friction.
That's right. The reports our research team analyzed highlight a really distinct policy shift happening in the U.S. regarding tax incentives. It looks like there's a legislative move underway to phase out the key technology-neutral tax credits, specifically the production tax credit, the PTC, and the investment tax credit, the ITC. And this phase-out targets new wind and solar projects that begin construction after mid-2026.
Yeah, and just to clarify for everyone, the PTC, that's a credit based on the actual energy produced, right? And the ITC is a credit based on the initial investment cost. These credits have really been the backbone of renewable energy expansion for years.
Definitely.
So phasing them out specifically for intermittent sources like wind and solar, it signals that the policy priority is shifting. The consensus we're seeing in the sources is that the sheer volume of intermittent power hitting the grid is now causing some serious management headaches. Basically, the rising cost of grid integration, things like transmission upgrades, balancing mechanisms, it's starting to outweigh the benefit of just low-cost generation sometimes. The grid needs quality, reliable power, not just quantity.
That complexity doesn't mean the growth stops entirely, though. I mean,
Oh.
wind and solar are still breaking installation records. They accounted for something like 91% of new U.S. capacity in the first half of 2025 alone.
Which is huge growth, absolutely.
But that inherent intermittency and these rising integration costs, they really underscore the strategic need for baseload power, or the alternative is breakthrough energy storage.
Exactly. And that's why storage is seen as this necessary technological bridge here. Battery breakthroughs are actually happening right alongside this nuclear renaissance. One major development highlighted in the materials comes from the University of Queensland. It's a sodium metal battery breakthrough, apparently retaining over 91% capacity after 1,000 cycles.
And sodium is interesting because it's cheaper and way more globally abundant than lithium, right? So potentially better cost scalability.
Precisely. And it's not just traditional batteries. We're also seeing progress in long-duration storage technologies. Things like thermal storage, which some research suggests could promise like 10x cost improvements over lithium-ion batteries.
10 times. Okay, put that in practical terms for us. What does that actually mean?
Well, it means you could potentially store, say, 10 days worth of power for roughly the same price as storing 1 day's worth with current lithium-ion tech.
Yeah.
That kind of leap fundamentally changes the economics of managing intermittent power from wind and solar. It's pretty essential if those low-density renewables are going to meet grid needs effectively long-term.
Okay, so we've got the technology accelerating, the policy aligning behind this hot core, but we absolutely have to discuss the core vulnerability that came up across the source material our team looked at, which is the back-end waste challenge for nuclear. This feels like where securing the green code, that social license to operate, really gets tested.
Exactly right. And we found sort of conflicting narratives regarding SMR waste management specifically, which need a critical look. The optimistic view is definitely compelling. Advanced SMR designs are being engineered to try and mitigate the problem. For example, there's a European design, the Eagly S300, which is undergoing multinational pre-licensing review right now. It's engineered to use recycled fuel, MOX fuel, which is mixed oxide fuel. And this recycled fuel, combined with advanced reactor designs, could potentially burn some of the long-lived isotopes in the waste. The idea is to significantly reduce the final volume and the long-term radiotoxicity of what's left over.
Okay, that's the optimistic case. But there's a challenging view too, right? The kind of critical thinking element here.
Yes, and we have to address it. Independent academic analysis suggests there might be a complication specific to SMRs. While the total volume of spent fuel might be lower overall, paradoxically, the smaller core size and the physical geometry of SMRs could actually increase the total volume of intermediate-level waste. That's things like the irradiated structural materials around the core.
Okay. So less spent fuel volume, but potentially more intermediate waste volume.
Potentially. And furthermore, these analyses suggest SMRs might produce spent fuel that has a higher concentration of difficult-to-manage plutonium isotopes per unit of energy generated compared to conventional large-scale reactors. So the challenge isn't just about the total volume, it's also about the density and the specific characteristics of the waste streams.
Right. So the success of this whole hot core renaissance, it seems like it hinges not just on getting the regulations streamlined and executing technically, but really on successfully securing that green code, that social and environmental license. And that means developing a clear, publicly accepted, and crucially, a demonstrably transparent solution for this waste dilemma. If the industry can't solve that back-end problem convincingly, all the front-end progress could risk stalling under public pressure, couldn't it?
Absolutely. It's a critical piece of the puzzle.
And just a reminder for our listeners on YouTube, if you're finding this insightful, please do take a moment to like this video, subscribe to Tomorrow Unveiled, and maybe consider hitting that new hype button to help us reach more viewers. And of course, make sure to turn on notifications so you never miss an update on the future.
So wrapping this up, I think the key takeaway from this deep dive is really the strategic shift. We've moved from debating if advanced nuclear will happen to really determining how fast it's going to happen. The US-UK partnership, those aggressive fusion timelines coming from both government and industry, and those dramatically revised global projections from the IAEA, they all confirm high-density energy is now seen as a geopolitical imperative. And it's being driven by the sheer scale of global digital demand.
Yeah, the next 24 to 36 months feel absolutely critical now. The success or indeed the failure of these first-of-a-kind projects, like the ones planned to replace old coal plants and power these new AI data centers, that performance will really determine whether the optimistic timelines we're hearing, like the early 2030s, are actually met. It really feels like an execution challenge now.
It does. And maybe a final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to consider. While the energy sector today is focusing heavily on high-density power for AI data centers and huge industrial complexes, the question is if this policy shift continues to prioritize firm, dispatchable power. What other critical sectors beyond data and heavy industry might find that only the hot core can truly meet their crucial, reliable energy demands in the next decade? Think about maybe transportation, large-scale water management, or even ambitious projects like direct air capture of carbon dioxide. Where else will this level of power be essential?
That's a fascinating question to leave things on, and we'll definitely be tracking those developments right here on Tomorrow Unveiled. Thank you so much for joining us.